They just tackled and handcuffed a sitting U.S. senator for trying to question Kristi Noem during her Homeland Security press conference, all while we're seeing growing concerns about troops on U.S. soil, ICE raids, civilian arrests, and the line between military support and law enforcement blurring fast. Iran's now doubling down as Trump says that Israel might attack them. A Boeing Dreamliner crashed today, killing over 200 people in one of the deadliest aviation disasters in recent history. And Sabrina Carpenter's degradation and nude scandal has the internet divided. We're jumping into all that and much more on today's brand new Philip DeFranco show. You daily dive into the news, starting with this. Senator Alex Padilla of California was just forcibly removed, tackled, and handcuffed while trying to ask a question at a press conference that DHS Secretary Kristi Noem was holding in LA.
Exaggerate and embellishing. Sir, hands up. I'm Senator Alex Padilla. I have questions for the secretary, because the fact of the matter is a half a dozen violent criminals that you're rotating on your
I also want to
hands off.
How many of our ICE agents have been docked?
On the ground. Hands behind your back. Hands behind your back.
If you let my hands go ahead, put them behind my back.
All right. Cool. Other hand. Lay flat.
Other hand, sir. Other hand.
With then the senator himself giving his own press briefing not long after, where he recounted his side of the story. With Padilla saying that he had been in the federal building in LA for a separate briefing when he learned that Noem was giving a presser down the hall, and then claiming that for weeks now, he and many of his colleagues have been asking the DHS for more information and answers on their immigration enforcement actions, but they have received little to no information. With him then going on to say that he went to Noem's press conference to see if he could get any more intel.
I was there peacefully. At one point, I had a question, and so I began to ask a question. I was almost immediately forcibly removed from the room. I was forced to the ground, and I was handcuffed. I was not arrested. I was not detained. I will say this. If this is how this administration responds to a senator with a question, if this is how the Department of Homeland Security responds to a senator with a question, you can only imagine what they're doing to farm workers, to cooks, to day laborers out in the Los Angeles community and throughout California and throughout the country. We will hold this administration accountable.
And to that point, we've seen a ton of people condemning this whole situation, including top Democratic leaders and Newsom himself, who posted, if they can handcuff a U.S. senator for asking a question, imagine what they will do to you. Though then, at the same time, you had Noem and her agency trying to paint a very different picture. With DHS saying in a statement on X, Senator Padilla chose disrespectful political theater and interrupted a live press conference without identifying himself or having a Senate security pin on as he lunged towards Secretary Noem. I mean, Mr. Padilla was told repeatedly to back away and did not comply with officers' repeated commands, saying Secret Service thought he was an attacker and officers acted appropriately. Though there you had people immediately pushing back, saying, we didn't see what happened before the video started, but it literally shows him clearly identifying himself as Senator Alex Padilla. But still, you had Noem herself echoing those claims during an interview with Fox News, or with the host showing her clips of Democrats condemning the situation and asking her how she responded.
Well, he was never arrested. And nobody knew who he was when he came into the room creating a scene. He was removed from the room, and yes, they started to put handcuffs on him when he finally identified himself, and then that was stopped. They said he wants to talk to you. I said, sure, I'd love to sit down and visit. So we went to a room and visited for 10 or 15 minutes and then exchanged phone numbers. So I just, I'm so sick of the politics, Martha.
But again, we literally have video evidence of Padilla identifying himself and then being taken out into the hall and handcuffed after doing so. Right? And so you have many saying it's pretty fucking wild for her to go on national television and try and gaslight America about something you can see in a video. And for now, we'll wait to see if anything comes from this. Because what we have seen some Republicans speaking out, it's been Republicans like Senator Susan Collins saying it's hard to imagine a justification for this. And Republican Senator Lisa Murkowski saying this is not the America I know. And then also beyond that, you have people using this as a moment to call for people to take to the streets and protest this Saturday. Echoing again what Newsom said, if they're gonna do this to a US Senator, imagine what they'll do to you. But as we wait to see how this situation develops, I'll pass the question off to you. What are your thoughts here? But then next up from that, we shift to the question of, is the military really going to arrest American citizens? Because that's what's being asked after Major General Scott Sherman, who's in charge of the troops being deployed to LA, said that the troops would be accompanying ICE on their raids to protect them. Now with that, Sherman has tried to make the distinction that his troops will just detain someone, saying we're there to protect their federal officers, their federal personnel, we're there to protect them so that they can do their job, with him then going on to add that if any of the personnel on a mission were assaulted, soldiers or Marines are allowed to take that person, detain them in place, wait for the federal law enforcement officer to come and arrest that individual. And that could take the form of holding someone down who assaulted an ICE officer and adding, we consider it once the guard member has his or her arm or holding that person, that's when they're detaining that person. Right? And you know, the idea that troops would be used for civil law enforcement, it's raised a lot of concerns, but then you have supporters claiming that it's really not that big of a deal, with their argument being that the troops aren't actually arresting people, they're just holding them long enough for the actual police to do it. But there are very real concerns that this is a distinction without a difference. You're seeing lawyers writing things like, if you were not free to go, that's an arrest. Saying crazy folks are arguing the Marines in LA are merely doing reasonable suspicion detentions when they are in fact arresting people for all intents and purposes, and whatever you call it, it is unlawful civilian law enforcement by military personnel without a declared insurrection. Which is also probably why we've seen this video from the National Lawyers Guild making the rounds again.
Oh, hello.
We were just talking about you kids.
I'm Denise Heberly.
And I'm Bill Goodman.
Together, we've been fighting fascism for over 50 years.
And so much has changed over those 50 years, such as the ingredients to a successful firebomb.
And the glass that bank windows are made of.
But there's one thing that hasn't changed over 50 years, something that is so important to tell you kids who are new to this movement.
Shut the f up. You're sitting in the police transport van after a protest?
Shut the f up.
And the reality is, this is one of those questions that we won't know the answer to until the courts eventually decide. Because, this is gonna end up in court, and while this would, be unthinkable just a few years ago, you have people noting that the Supreme Court often tends to bend a lot of the rules for Trump. And really, the only thing delaying this is a lull in the protests, as well as the fact that the troops in LA are actually in training right now for how to deal with protests and learning what they're allowed to do and won't be ready for a day or so. Though notably, they will likely be ready just in time for the No Kings protests that are planned for the weekend. And all of that is we've seen increasing ICE raids happening all across the US. Because despite the mass protests that we've seen, the agency hasn't stopped. With the latest big raids happening at farmland in Oxnard, California, as well as a meatpacking plant in Omaha, Nebraska. And while both were large raids, the one in Omaha was particularly big and focused on 97 people that ICE wanted to screen. All of which then left the company completely confused and concerned. And with that, you had ICE confirming that the raid took place and claimed that it was, quote, based on an ongoing criminal investigation into the large-scale employment of aliens without authorization to work in the United States. However, with that, you had Chad Hartman telling outlets, my biggest issue is, why us? We do everything by the book. And what he meant by that is that the company uses the E-Verify system to hire workers, which is a federal database used to check the immigration status of people. However, that apparently didn't matter because, according to Hartman, the ICE agents told him that the system is broken, which he then said, I mean, what am I supposed to do with that? This is your system run by the government, and you're raiding me because your system is broken? With Hartman then contacting his representative, who got him some answers, with him saying that apparently ICE wasn't targeting Hartman's company, but instead workers using allegedly stolen identities, with Representative Don Bacon saying ICE verified that Glen Valley Foods complied with E-Verify 100% and is a victim in this as well. However, regardless of the how or why, it appears that the raids on America's food supply, it actually has worried some of Trump's base, and or Donald Trump himself, because he actually responded to concerns in a post writing, our great farmers and people in the hotel and leisure business have been stating that our very aggressive policy on immigration is taking very good long-term workers away from them, with those jobs being almost impossible to replace. With him then claiming in many cases the criminals allowed into our country by the very stupid Biden open borders policy are applying for those jobs. This is not good. We must protect our farmers, but get the criminals out of the USA. Changes are coming. And Trump actually added to this today when he responded to a reporter saying,
well, we're not targeting. In fact, if you look today, I put out a statement today about farmers. Our farmers are being hurt badly by, they have very good workers. They've worked for them for 20 years. They're not citizens, but they've turned out to be, great. And we're going to have to do something about that. We can't take farmers and take all their people and send them back because they don't have maybe what they're supposed to have, maybe not.
With Trump then going on to say when 20-year-long workers are picked up, farmers are then forced to hire criminals. All of which has led many to believe that Trump might be reversing his ICE policy at least somewhat, with claims that powerful allies likely contacted him angry about the raids hurting their businesses. You even had Governor Gavin Newsom making a statement saying,
so just moments ago, Donald Trump made a major reversal in his mass deportation policy. Indiscriminately, he's been sending armed agents into farms and fields and ranches all throughout California and increasingly across the country. I was in Oxnard, California yesterday. I met with a 12-year-old boy. Tears pouring down his face. His mom and dad snatched by agents. They were working the fields for over 20 years. He doesn't know where they are. He has no family in the United States. He's here alone, a sixth grader. Donald Trump may not care about him, but he's finally listening to you, calling out these indiscriminate acts of cruelty. Let's keep up the pressure and let's do it peacefully.
And that, of course, on top of other policies by the Trump administration which have hurt them. Right? The retaliatory tariffs other countries imposed hurt farmers, and Trump's immigration policies are hurting travel. Especially when you're seeing videos like this where a Chilean tourist was arrested by ICE in New York City for no real reason and her kid left in the street. You know, with that, while anecdotal, and I'd love to know if you have similar or completely different situations that you've seen, you know, almost everyone that I know living abroad, they've canceled any travel plans to the US because of shit like this. But really, unfortunately, across the board, it is likely that things are going to remain tense for a while. Especially because, like, without a doubt, we're going to be talking about this weekend's protests on Monday. I just hope it's something like massive, peaceful protests across the country and not protesters killed and injured in clashes with US troops. And so with that, I'll say, you know, if you're going to go out there to protest, please be peaceful. Do not take the bait from police or any authorities. And if you are detained, shut the fuck up. But then from that, shifting to more social and entertainment news, Sabrina Carpenter has been a bad, bad girl, and she is single-handedly setting feminism back decades. That is what you're seeing tons of people claiming right now after she released the cover art for her new album, Man's Best Friend. You know, the title clearly being a nod to dogs being a man's best friend, and so the cover shows her in stilettos and a little black dress, crawling on the ground while a person, presumably a man, tugs at her hair like it's a leash. And then the dog comparison is emphasized with additional artwork that just shows the album's title on a puppy's collar. So you had many finding this to be incredibly degrading, and they wrote things like, "This is not feminism and this is not empowering. Look at her comparing herself to a dog kneeling in front of a man. This is derogatory as fuck." As well as, can't she do anything else other than showing women as an object to men? And women face horrific domestic abuse and degradation at the hands of men every single day, but she wants to profit off of imagery of herself being degraded, comparing herself to a dog. But then tons of people also echoing that in Sabrina's Instagram comments, saying that it looks like a humiliation ritual and that no one wants to see a man dragging a woman on the ground, especially in this political climate. So this is, you then also had a ton of people defending Sabrina, arguing that if you put it in the context of her work, it's clearly satire. Right there, you have people noting the lead single of the album is called Man Child, saying it's not a bow down to men anthem, and in it she calls men slow, stupid, and useless. So you've got people arguing that she's actually just trying to show how men treat women like pets and play with the fact that sexually promiscuous women have been referred to as bitches, aka dogs, historically. And some arguing that the commentary should be especially obvious given the album's name is Man's Best Friend. But then you have others arguing there is a difference between intent and effect, and the effect here is that she just objectified herself. Or with some writing things like intentionally reproducing a misogynistic aesthetic, even under the guise of satire, doesn't subvert it, it reinforces it. Right? And arguing that it's just lazy commentary, saying it says men treat women like objects while making sure to look as sex potty and bangable as possible. Though then connected, but separate from that, you have people saying that the outrage seems to be a symptom of culture becoming too anti-sex and purity focused. With some there even saying, "I fear we have stopped doing things for the male gazed ourselves back into expecting women to be modest and shaming them otherwise." And then notably, the usual 12-hour discourse window, it got an extension this morning because her cover for Rolling Stone was released. And that, it features her fully nude, minus thigh-high socks and long hair covering her body. You know, with all this, while Sabrina Carpenter hasn't addressed this specific backlash yet, you know, the discourse around her and her sexuality, it's not really anything new. But she often sings about sex, she also leans into it during certain parts of her tour, and there was a whole controversy on if she should be doing dance moves alluding to sex on stage, given that some of her fans are young. And actually, in today's Rolling Stone piece, she talked about all the criticism and what's been referred to as nitpicking that she deals with. But they're saying, "I don't want to be pessimistic, but I truly feel like I've never lived in a time where women have been picked apart more and scrutinized in every capacity. I'm not just talking about me, I'm talking about every female artist that is making art right now. We're in such a weird time where you would think it's girl power and women supporting women, but in reality, the second you see a picture of someone wearing a dress on a carpet, you have to say everything mean about it in the first 30 seconds that you see it." And then, regarding people being so quick to call her out on putting sexual elements in her shows, she said, "It's always so funny to me when people complain. They're like, all she does is sing about this. But those are the songs that you've made popular. You clearly love sex. You're obsessed with it. It's in my show. There's so many more moments. If you come to the show, you'll also hear the ballads. You'll hear the more introspective numbers." But hey, you know, with all that said, I'd really love to know where you stand on this. Like, what are your thoughts and opinions here? Let me know in those comments. Because, you know, whether you're watching this show from a church pew or you're in the tub right now with your Sydney Sweeney bathwater soap, I'm interested to know your take here, because this is a topic that's kind of come up in different versions over the past 20 years of this show, and the takes, they seem to evolve and change over the years. And then you've got more news in just a minute, but first, I spent this past weekend getting way too into my Switch 2, which don't judge. I said I was gonna disassociate, and I was playing for hours. And now I can honestly say with DBrand, today's sponsor, DBrand's kill switch case, it legit changed the handheld experience. The grips were a lifesaver. I mean, usually after an hour, my wrists kind of hate me. But with the kill switch, there's no cramps, no drops, all thanks to their textured handles. Most cases, they're bulky or a pain when you want to swap Joy-Cons. But not with the kill switch, right? They pop on, they pop off, no hassle. It fits so well, it feels like Nintendo made it. Like seriously, it is comfortable and it actually feels super secure. It's also gonna be great to travel with. I mean, the included cover is a beast. And so I know it'll protect my investment, plus it's crush proof and it holds 10 game cards, so that's convenient. And I'm actually in the process of getting a second one because my son actually cares about physical media. He loves the cartridges, and so he's like, I need that case. Also, gotta talk about the screen protector. I mean, it's just stupid easy to install, and they even give you a backup in case you mess up. Also, docking's a breeze. There's no need to take the case off, and you still get full 4K 60 pass-through, so I was all set for couch game. And yeah, you can also customize it with DBrand skins. I mean, there's tons of styles, super easy to swap. The bottom line is to protect your Switch 2, to keep it comfy, to actually make it look better. The kill switch is a no-brainer. So just scan that QR code or check the link below, dbrand.com/DeFranco to save up to $35. This is just horrible. You hate to see this. More than 200 people were killed as a Boeing 787 Dreamliner with 242 people on board crashed in India. The Air India flight having reportedly been en route to London. And as of recording, that death count reportedly includes not only those on the plane, but people on the ground as well. And of course, because this is a developing situation, we should expect that number to change. But as far as what we know right now, the plane took off from the western Indian city of Ahmedabad today at 1:38 p.m. local time, with it then crashing just a few minutes later into a dining facility at a medical college 3.5 miles away, with it killing at least 5 students there at the college. So again, it's feared that the death toll on campus and in the surrounding area could be higher, with the dean of the college saying most of the students escaped, but 10 or 12 were trapped in the fire. Also, at least 41 people were injured and received treatment, though notably that number could include both passengers and people on the ground. And as far as passengers, so far, there's at least one survivor from the plane being reported, with that being a British national who was sitting in seat 11A. Also, beyond that, it's not immediately clear what caused the crash. And there, we're hearing that it could take months or years to determine exactly what happened, and you have the US and UK sending experts to help with the investigation. Also, regarding the specific plane in question, like I mentioned, it is a Boeing 787-8 Dreamliner. And of course, Boeing, as well as that specific model of plane, now that's been in the hot seat for years now. Because as far as the Dreamliner, it's never been involved in a fatal crash, but it has experienced operational problems in the past with passengers on board, which has resulted in injuries. And starting back in 2021, you had deliveries being paused for more than a year due to concerns that the company's planned inspection method didn't meet federal requirements. And then they actually got paused again in 2023 over an issue with the fuselage, which the company said didn't affect safety. Though then, last year, the FAA saying that it's investigating claims by a Boeing engineer that parts of the fuselage were improperly fastened together, which the whistleblower said could cause premature damage to the plane over years of use. So you had Boeing saying they found no evidence to support the whistleblower's concerns after conducting exhaustive tests. But this notably is other whistleblowers have also raised concerns about the factory where the Dreamliner is assembled, including John Barnett. Or with John being a former quality manager with almost 3 decades of experience at Boeing, who went public with his concerns in 2019, and then he ended up killing himself last year after a years-long battle with the company. And all of that, I mean, that's just with the Dreamliner. As far as Boeing as a whole, I mean, the timing of this is kind of wild. Just last month, the company reached a deal with the Justice Department to avoid criminal responsibility for a pair of deadly 737 MAX crashes in 2018 and 2019. A deal also that notably a lawyer for the victims' families called morally repugnant. And then adding to all that, Air India, they're not a stranger to controversy. With us seeing things like, for example, in 2020, an Air India Express flight, which happened to be on a Boeing 737, overshooting the runway, killing 21, with that eventually, though, getting blamed on pilot error. Which is also why, with all that, I cannot stress this enough, we really have no idea right now how or why this happened yet, and we really can't go jumping to any conclusions. But one, I mean, this is just heartbreaking, and our thoughts and well wishes to those affected, and two, understandably, there's a lot of people concerned, and hopefully we learn something from these investigations. But then jumping from that, we got to talk about Israel now reportedly getting ready to attack Iran, and the US is evacuating personnel from the region in response to the rising tensions. And all of this as the UN nuclear watchdog has officially said for the first time in 20 years that Iran isn't meeting its obligations. And Iran's vowing to even further ramp up its uranium enrichment capabilities in response. Now with all that, it is not clear what kind of attack Israel might be preparing, but notably, the commander of the Revolutionary Guard has warned that his country's retaliation to any Israeli attack would be, quote, more forceful and destructive than in the past, with Iranian officials also warning that any military action against Iran would produce severe consequences, potentially including strikes on American military bases, or which may be why the administration has reportedly ordered all embassies within striking distance of Iran to come up with assessments about danger and about measures to mitigate risks to Americans and U.S. infrastructure, with also the State Department ordering the departure of all non-essential personnel from the U.S. Embassy in Baghdad and DBrand, authorizing the departure of non-essential personnel and family members from Bahrain and Kuwait. And then you also have Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth giving the go-ahead for military dependence across the entire region to just get the hell out. With us seeing one expert arguing that the U.S. drawdown in the region, it sends a message that Trump won't necessarily hold Israel back, which is very notable because just a few months ago you had Trump reportedly waving off another Israeli plan to attack Iran and insisting that he wanted a chance to negotiate a deal. And one, those talks actually picked back up a few weeks ago, and two, just 2 weeks ago, Trump said that he again warned Netanyahu about launching a strike while discussions were underway. But more recently, Iran rejected a U.S. proposal that would have provided it with a fuel for reactors while preventing it from building a nuclear weapon or enriching uranium. With Trump, after having expressed optimism about the situation, now saying that he was growing less confident about getting a deal. Though with that, you still have diplomats in Oman, where the talks are being held, saying that a sixth session will go ahead this weekend between U.S. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff and the Iranian foreign minister. But of course, we're gonna have to see whether this Israeli attack actually happens, what it looks like, and how Iran responds. And in the meantime, this move by the UN nuclear watchdog, the International Atomic Energy Agency, it's only added to the tensions. Right? I mean, you had the agency's board of governors voting on a resolution formally saying that Iran is not complying with its nuclear non-proliferation obligations. With the US, UK, France, and Germany putting forward the resolution, 19 voting in favor, 13 either abstaining or not voting, and Russia, China, and Burkina Faso voting against. And like I said, this is the first time Iran has been found in breach of its obligations in 2 decades, with the IAEA specifically taking issue with Iran's refusal since 2019 to explain activity at 3 nuclear sites, as well as its buildup of a stockpile of uranium enriched to 60%, which is close to weapons grade. Right, and with that, you have Iran claiming that its nuclear program is for civilian use and that it doesn't want to actually develop weapons. But you also have others arguing that there is no conceivable civil nuclear need for Iran to enrich uranium at levels of 60%. Right, because to give you some key context here, the normal level of enrichment for a nuclear power reactor is somewhere from 3 to 5%. And so you have the president of the Institute for Science and International Security saying, if you are at 60% enriched, you are 99% of the way to weapon-grade uranium, which is the ideal material for nuclear weapons. So this program does not look like a civil program, with him then adding there that Iran could get to weapons-grade uranium within a week, while a crude nuclear explosive device could be attached within months. And in fact, to that point, you have the IAEA saying that Iran already has enough highly enriched uranium at near weapons grade to build 10 bombs in less than a year. And so with all that, Iran's failure to comply with the nuclear watchdog's requirements could be grounds for reinstalling all the multinational and UN sanctions that were lifted as part of the 2015 nuclear deal, which was between Iran, the EU, several other countries, and of course the US under Barack Obama. But you also may remember that Trump unilaterally withdrew the US from that deal in 2018, with Iran announcing a couple years later that it would no longer comply with limits on uranium enrichment set by the deal. And now you're seeing in response to the IAEA vote that the Iranian Foreign Ministry and National Atomic Energy Agency have come out with a joint statement condemning the move, with them claiming that the resolution had completely called into question the agency's credibility and prestige, and then also announcing that the country would launch a new enrichment center in a secure location and replace the first-generation machines at another site with more modern equipment. And so right now, who knows what's going to happen, right? Is there any hope of this deal being salvaged? Is the situation going to continue to escalate? Is there going to be an Israeli strike? Time will tell, and we'll see. Then, shifting gears from that as we begin to wind down today's show, I want to give you a very different kind of news. It's a story about love, legacy, and a surprise. Right? And it starts in Michigan, and specifically the Sterling Heights Public Library, because that is where on her very first day volunteering, 87-year-old Helen found an old wedding photo tucked into the pages of a donated book, with that photo featuring a bride and a groom along with another couple, and on the back it had the names Frank and Josephine Ruggiero. With Helen thinking, what a shame it was that there was this nice picture from somebody's big day and they didn't know anything about it. And so she turns the photo over to the library's administration office, who then actually immediately goes to work on tracking down the Ruggiero family, with Annalise White, the library's public relations and programs coordinator, making a post on Facebook featuring the photo and saying the library was on a mission to reunite the picture with its rightful family, calling on the community to identify this couple. And you had Annalise later saying, wedding photographs are so meaningful and we just thought it was worth the try to reunite it with its rightful owner. And then within just a few hours of that post going up, you had Sarah Ruggiero being tagged by a childhood friend who recognized the last name, with Sarah saying she immediately recognized that it was her grandparents and she was completely stunned, because turns out Frank and Josephine were first-generation Sicilian Americans who were married in Detroit on September 26, 1953. And over the course of their 67-year marriage, they had 5 children, 9 grandchildren, and 2 great-grandchildren, with Sarah actually being one of the 9 grandchildren. And she said, they were so proud of their Sicilian heritage and family traditions. They were such a huge presence in my life, and they valued family and togetherness above all. But then going on to talk about weekly Sunday dinners with their grandparents, the cookies that Josephine would make, Frank's love of sports, and the close relationships they fostered with everyone in their big family until the days they died. With Frank passing away in 2020 and Josephine just 3 years later. But then with that, you had Sarah saying that this whole situation, it felt like her grandparents were checking in and saying hello, with her adding, "We miss them so much, and it was just so cool and out of the blue to have this reminder of them." And making it a little extra beautiful, you had Sarah saying that the family hadn't actually seen this particular photo from Frank and Josephine's wedding before. And then as far as, the mystery of why this photo is in this book, well, there we learned that the answer was actually in the photo itself. Or that other couple, they were Sarah's great aunt and uncle, both of which died before she was born, but that couple's granddaughter saw the Facebook post as well, reached out to Sarah and said, it makes sense because the book was donated to the library by her father, who has a tendency to use pictures as bookmarks. And so in that way, it also brought this family together, because you had Sarah saying, my dad has such a big family, and I've met a lot over the years, but there's a ton of distant cousins and relatives, and we've all been connecting through this reminder of my grandparents. So one, just a beautiful story of happenstance, and two, it kind of serves as a little reminder that family is the thing that matters the most. And I mean that both with the family that loves you and is there for you as you should, and the family that you choose. It's easy to get disconnected, but hey, if I can give you a little homework, as we hop into this last segment, do a little multitasking for me. Send a text to 1 to 4 people in your life you care about, you love, and just say, hey, I was thinking about you, love you, hope you're doing good. It'll mean more than you realize, and without each other, we're kind of nothing. But then, finally today, let's end with the congratulations and talk about y'all's comments from yesterday. Starting with the congratulations to Asha J, SeatGeek's latest weekly winner, who just scored $500, and she's excited to go see Baby Metal with Black Veil Brides. And for the rest of y'all, that's right, SeatGeek is still giving away $500 in tickets, and you should definitely enter today if you haven't already. I mean, you could be the next winner and snag $500 towards seeing your favorite artist, sporting event, or play. I mean, there's like over 70,000 events to choose from. And all you gotta do is add code PDS to your SeatGeek app profile for a chance at the weekly $500 prize, no purchase necessary. Plus, that code will even take $10 off your next purchase, so it's just a win-win-win. That said, let's dive into y'all's comments from yesterday's show on some commentary. Which, just to start, I didn't realize until yesterday that I can actually reply in the comments with voice messages, and so I'm gonna start doing that, so definitely leave comments with your thoughts, opinions, questions, whatever today. In those comments there were a lot of people sounding off on the Trump-Elon Musk situation. With Remon writing, you just know that the dude wrote Trump is in the Epstein files while high as a kite, and when his high ran out, he remembered he's in the files as well, so he deleted the tweet and apologized. Others also saying, how the hell could anyone say women are too emotional to be president after following the Trump and Musk feud? Which I will say, could you imagine if the president or the person that was in Elon Musk's position was a woman? The fucking national discourse you'd see play out, the narratives. But that also extends to so many things. I mean, I don't know, watching the first few months of this Trump presidency, the number of times that Trump has said, I don't know, about a situation that pretty much everyone is aware of, and definitely the president should be aware of and have an opinion and take on, is fucking wild. And just how that ends up getting glossed over, not even by just right-wing media, but just like media in general. And that doesn't even touch on things like Trump saying that he talked to Newsom the day before, but it was actually 3 days before. And then certain media and certain figures just cut out that part about the several days, and they tried to make it like Trump just said, I talked to the guy. And then they were like, look, and the receipts show that. Both as a consumer and someone that makes content in this space, it's wild to see. Also on the Trump-Elon Musk topic, a lot of people were angry at me because they went, why'd you make me agree with Candace Owens on something? With Cater Free adding to that comment, I want off this insane timeline. And the Puzzled Boy saying, heartbreaking, what are the worst people you've heard of? Just made a good point. You then also had a number of people saying that Elon's essentially, he didn't even really fully apologize. Candace Owens was right on that. He kind of just said, I regret what I did. But you had people saying that he only ended up doing that because he realized he had nowhere else to go. With, for example, Courier 6 Gaming writing, Elon, guess I'll change sides again. The left immediately ejects him back out through the window. Elon, guess it's time to suck up again. Though overall, I think the most liked comment on yesterday's show was, I feel like 2025 is going to become a case study in cognitive dissonance and show how desperate people are to protect their ego and not admit they were wrong, even if it destroys their lives. Which, hey, could be, might be, we'll see. Though I will say, who knows what the national conversation and what narratives will be at play next week. Especially, I mean, a lot of it's gonna depend on how Saturday goes. Or the military / Donald Trump's birthday parade, the protests, it's nationwide stuff. I mean, it's that day, depending on what does or doesn't happen, I'm just hoping people stay safe. That is gonna set the tone. But that is where your show ends today. Let me know your thoughts, opinions, and reactions in those comments, especially because I wanna try out that new audio comment reply feature. And let me just say, thank you for watching, thank you for subscribing, and I'll see you back here on Monday. Because of course, remember, I got a brand new show for you every Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday at 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific. Love you, mean it, bye.